are on the road to Nebraska, quite literally, Michigan, going to Memorial Stadium to take on the Cornhuskers. Let's talk about it, preview it, give the final prediction on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. I almost forgot what day it is. I should know. I am on the road. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hull, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Thank you to all of our everydayers who check out the show every single day. Thank you for making us your first listen. We do appreciate that as well. We will get into hopes and expectations in segment 1. Segment 2, what do I think will happen? Segment 3, final prediction. As we are here on the road, I am in Iowa at this point. You're going to have to forgive me for every now and again as I caffeinate and hydrate. I think that's probably not hydrating too much. All right, so we spent the whole week talking about Michigan versus Central Michigan. And there was a lot to really like about that, right? We saw things almost all the way good around 2 of 3 phases, some snafus on special teams. You hope that you keep that buttoned up. It's funny, you grab a little pieces from that you like about football philosophy, essentially. Much like how I love using Dan Mullen's discussion of if you're a third rounder or better, then you should go to the NFL early. If you're worse, you should come back. I use that a lot. Jim Harbaugh talking about how do you win a football game? Well, you have to win at least 2 of the 3 phases. You're generally not going to be incredible offensively and terrible defensively in special teams and win a game. So that, I kind of adhere to that a bit. But obviously you want to see some of the near misses on special teams, missed field goals. The Samaj Morgan obviously had a couple times there where someone's right in his grill. He needs to be better about communicating. Andrew Marsh did have the turnover in week 1. They need to get those things buttoned up. They got to punt well. We don't talk enough about special teams, but it is crucial. But on the other end, and again, if you're watching on video, sorry for the shakiness. It's funny because it's like the phone mount here is not as good as if I got something mounted a camera. We'll do that for the future at some point. But nonetheless, we know that the defense is probably, if nothing else, going to give the offense a shot, right? Like, it gave the offense a shot against Oklahoma, right? Allowing 24 points to Oklahoma is about as good as you can ask for on the road. At home, maybe it's a little bit of a different story, but on the road, allowing 24 points, and it took all game for them to get to that point. The defense gave them everything that you can ask for, generally. Now, eventually, you hope the defense is more like how it was late season last year, giving up 10 points to Ohio State, giving up 13 to Alabama. But in the early season, when you don't know what a team's really going to do, especially we didn't really know exactly what the Ben Arbuckle, John Mateer-led scenario was going to look like in Norman. You also don't really know what your defense is quite yet, right? Like, as much as we know, you don't really know until you put everybody out there for a new year. So, with that said, I do believe that the defense will give the offense a shot. I absolutely think that that'll be the case. Especially given that Nebraska has been very good passing the football. But the strengths of Nebraska, even though I would say Michigan's pass defense as a whole is probably not as good as you want it to be, looking at that back end. At the same time, I think by virtue of Dylan Raiola not being necessarily a mobile quarterback, he can extend plays, but not as well as, say, Bryce, not as well as John Mateer, certainly. A little bit bigger of a figure to bring down, but I still think that you can kind of force him into some mistakes. You can force things out. They haven't been as good at running the football, number one. And that plays right into Michigan's teeth. So you already have, though, the idea that Dylan Raiola, even though it is a strength for them to pass the football, could be playing a little bit into Michigan's strength in terms of, hey, it's really kind of more the mobile guys that really affect us. We know that at this point. By not being mobile, now Connor brought up on the manifesto yesterday that they do a lot of quick game. That is one way that I would expect them to test Michigan's defense. But Michigan's seen it. Michigan's done a pretty good job against quick game. It does negate a bit of the pass rush, so don't sit and come to me and be like, if they run a bunch of quick game, why didn't they get sacks, right? Because that's why I could have better articulated in the mailbag on Tuesday why I'm not that concerned about the defensive line. I mentioned the holds and things of that nature, but I want to add in the quick game, right? Like, teams that run a lot of quick game against Michigan's defense, you're not going to see a heck of a lot of sacks, right? You're just not. But I have a lot of faith in the offense to being able to, or defense to being able to hold Nebraska to a point total that should be good for Michigan. Now, on the other side of the ball, what I think is really interesting here is Nebraska, again, who have they faced? You know, Cincinnati at least is a Power 4 team. I didn't remember that until I watched them and recognized, okay, they're in the Big 12. That seems weird, but okay. Changing landscapes and such. I still have a hard time accepting some of the other teams that are now in the Big 12 as being Power 4 teams. But nonetheless, you figure, okay, let's see if I can get this to stabilize a little bit so it's not just shaking. I don't think so. It's funny, the car's not shaking. It's just the camera. The pass defense is very good. Now, I would give a couple caveats. I think that Bryce Underwood, despite his inexperience, is probably the best quarterback that they have seen so far. Now, that is reliant on Bryce Underwood going on the road and playing the way he did in weeks 1 and week 3 and not how he did against what I think was probably a superior Oklahoma defense with a superior style of play under Brent Venables. I think this is going to be a completely different scenario. So there's that. So you've got that part. And then on top of it, I think that the fact that they've had a really faulty rush defense plays into Michigan's hands. So you've got that on either side of the ball. So it's going to be up to Michigan to taking advantage. I will expect that Michigan will eclipse their 100 yards passing that they have not given up so far this year. I will say that Michigan has tended to, as we've talked about, you know, Penn State 2022, Urban Meyers, they will stop the run. Michigan's like, okay, bet. I do think that it is going to be like you'll see a pretty, at least decent passing attempt by Michigan. Now it's going to be up to a lot of other things at play. How does Michigan's offensive line hold up? How does, and again, against a somewhat undersized Nebraska defensive line. How does Michigan's offensive line hold up? How do the receivers do? You get, you know, Hogan Hansen, Marlon Klein seem like they're both really good to go. Defensively, looks like Rod Moore's good to go. You know, shaking off rust for all three. I mean, you saw Marlon and Hogan shaking off rust last week. How is that going to go? I don't know. We'll see. All right, let's continue the conversation. Let's keep along these same lines as then we eventually delve into predictions and previews and all of that. We'll do that here in just a moment. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. These are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is Bryce Underwood, of course, with his throw. I'm going to go with this time the throw to Samaj. That, I don't know if you pick the throw to Samaj, you pick one of the two rushing touchdowns. It's kind of hard to say. Just Bryce Underwood in general. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, we are going to continue on here in just a moment. But before we do, after I wait for the spinning gears, for those who sit there and say I'm bad with technology, sometimes the technology is just bad to me. There we go. The weather's cooling down and the days are getting shorter, and that has me wanting to make my home feel even cozier. And when it comes to cozifying your space this fall, Wayfair is the place to go. Wayfair has everything you need to set the mood for the season, whether it's comfy recliners, warm bedding, autumn decor, or even an espresso machine so you can make your favorite latte at home. Here's the thing, I just got some curtains, got everything kind of all set, make everything a little bit quieter at night, make things a little bit darker. It's absolutely the perfect time to set up your home for fall so you can enjoy cozy nights in with family and friends. Cozify your space with Wayfair's curated collection of easy, affordable fall updates, from comfy recliners to cozy bedding and autumn decor. You'll find it all for way less at wayfair.com. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, breaking up the show because I can't do ad reads while driving. Thought about bringing my iPad in the front. I stopped over at the world's largest truck stop. I'm always really disappointed. It's only my second time going there, so it's not always. It's just the second time I've been there. Last time I went was on this same trip in 2023. And I don't know why I like driving to Nebraska rather than flying. I flew in 2021. I mean, I think we all know why I don't like flying in general, but if this was like going to Atlanta, which is the same distance, I'd have no qualms. Maybe it's different going east-west rather than north-south. Don't ask me how or why. Nonetheless, I always disappointed when I go to the world's largest truck stop, but I thought about grabbing the iPad out and seeing what we could do, but recognize that's not safe. We can just, this is going to be a late post, not like this, it's 3:30 Eastern time right now. This isn't going to be up until like 7 or 8 tonight. So what's the harm of waiting? There is none. All right. So you've got a lot of pieces that I think are working well for Michigan. And what I'm very curious to see as far as what Nebraska does is, do they try to go with the idea of let's force Bryce Underwood to beat us? Now, if they do that, if they go cover one, essentially, you're asking for all kinds of trouble. I'm getting cut off by a semi. This is the fun part of doing this. Just have to slam right on the brakes. You're asking for, here's what, just to backtrack for a second. Urban Meyer on Urban Analysis says like, seeing Bryce running the ball, that automatically eliminates 60% of your defensive playbook. With a week to go, I just wonder what that's going to end up looking like, right? Because Chip Lindsey, this offense finally looked like Chip Lindsey's offense last week, okay? We didn't see it really look like that necessarily. We saw a little bit in week 1, none of it in week 2, and then they kind of get back to it in week 3. So how does Nebraska respond? Because this does not really feel like hey, we can just play our game and, if we do that, then we're going to be able to come away with the W. I don't think that's necessarily the case for the Huskers in this one. I don't. I think Michigan's shown a dimension it has not really had. Because as good as JJ was at running the football, it was a different deal with Bryce doing so last week. Like Connor mentioned, only really 2 designed runs. 90 of the 114 yards came on scrambles. So if you're Nebraska, you're kind of feeling that Michigan can kind of look in some ways kind of similar to how Oklahoma did against Michigan, right? Like that, those are things that you're going to have to plan for. And with that, if you don't plan for it, then there will be more opportunities in terms of downfield passing threats. And they might just say, let's go ahead and do that, right? Let's let him beat us with the arm. Let's see if he can beat us with the legs. Maybe we feel like we're stout up front enough. They've got good linebackers. They're undersized up front. As much as I've heard others say, like Michigan, whether it's Joe Klatt, J.D. Pickell, Michigan's going to try to ground and pound. They've got the offensive line. I'm not sold yet enough on the offensive line, just because they looked really good in week 3, and we know that that's what they want the identity to be. I don't know that I'm sold enough on the offensive line to say, yes, that is an absolute win. I don't know. This is the game where we're going to find out a lot more. So we'll see. But I will be curious to see. They don't have the same type of defensive scheme with the 3-3-5-ish looks that they like to use. They don't have the same defensive scheme that should create the havoc and confusion for Bryce as Oklahoma had. Now, with that in mind, they've got some really good defensive backs. You're going to need Bryce to be accurate. All of his throws are going to have to look like the Hogan Hansen or Samaj Morgan throws. Maybe not all of them, but enough of them are going to have to be. Like, I don't think you're going to be able to live off of 3 out of 30 passes. I don't think he'll pass it for 30 times if things go right. But you're going to have to look at more NFL caliber throws, which I think he is fully capable of based off of what we've seen and what we've heard. So that at least plays to your advantage there. But you're going to have to really be able to layer in that football. Connor mentioned yesterday about the Channing Goodwin pass that was rocketed in. I still think that should have been a catch regardless of how hard it is. They've had enough time on task to know, like, okay, he's gonna really rifle it in some cases. So there is that part, but like he's gonna have to layer it, he's gonna have to position it, and he has that capability of doing so. On the other side of the ball, Dylan Raiola does as well. So you're really gonna have to disrupt things and try to get them into a quick game type of scenario. And if Zeke Berry returns, I wonder with his experience, can he do something? He's a guy who's had a couple interceptions in his career, not this year so far. But is he someone who can make some of the quick game things uncomfortable for Dylan Raiola? And more importantly, can the pass rush get him off of his spot? This is where I'm curious to see, how do you deploy Jayshon Barham? Because it's a different deal. Now, they love Jimmy Rolder, but it's a different deal saying we're going to go to that third guy as a linebacker and then walk up the other linebacker and put his hand in the ground and make him an edge rusher. Like, you essentially, you want your most athletic guys out on the field, like doing what they're supposed to be doing. Jayshon's shown proclivities both at linebacker and now at edge rusher. But I think you also still want Jayshon to be in the best position for Michigan to succeed. So that'll be an interesting thing as well. I think Michigan will likely do very well against the run. I do think that there are going to be drives where Michigan gets got. They have not looked quite like end of 2024 as of yet, or anytime 21, 22, 23. Shouldn't say anytime. It took them a little while in 21 to get there, but 22, 23 was electric from, right out the gates. So I'm not sure exactly what the defense is going to be, but I would venture to say, like, you've got to offensively put up more than 21 points. And really, you have to shut down whatever script Nebraska has to start things off, right? I think that's one of the big keys to playing road games like this. Try to take the crowd out of it as fast as possible and then weather the storm. I think about not 2023 Nebraska, but I think of 2022. I say this maybe because I'm seeing University of Iowa signs right now, just to give you an idea of exactly where I am. I'm thinking 2022 Iowa, right? Michigan cut through that defense like a hot knife through butter, did their job defensively, went into halftime up something like 14-3. I can't remember the exact score. I think scored one other time, but held on for dear life in that game. That's the difference between the road and home, because you don't have that crowd momentum. And on the other side, like, the crowd gives energy to the other team. I want to also, with that in mind, I want to see Michigan come out with a little bit more fire in their belly in warm-ups compared to what I saw at Oklahoma. At Oklahoma, Bryce had it. I didn't feel like anyone else did. I didn't have this feeling like, man, they're ready and raring to go, the same way that they were in 21 at either Wisconsin or at Nebraska. That felt very subdued. I want to see some energy right out the gates. And on top of it, I want to see the coaching staff be smart with what they call. You can let Bryce make mistakes. I like what Connor said yesterday about the idea of, play to the borderline of recklessness. That's what you do with a quarterback like this. Let him make plays. Yeah, he might turn the ball over every now and again. I would venture to guess he learned a bit from what happened last week. I still think that wasn't as reckless of a play if he puts more air under it and has the right mechanics. But that tells him, I'm sure he looked at it and said, I could have hit McCulley down deep, didn't throw it long enough because I was rushing my throw, didn't get enough torque on my spin, my upper body turn, and as a result, that ended up being that ended up being an interception. I think that Bryce is likely to learn from something like that. And hopefully Bryce continues to play within, not within himself, but like with the moxie that he already has. So what do I think is going to happen? I've been back and forth on this. I'm not even sure going into segment 3 that I know exactly what I think is going to happen, but let's get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, there are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's the local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are places that bring people together. When businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. One place I love in Ann Arbor is, because I'm an ice cream fiend, Blake Slate Creamery. It's incredible. It's the kind of place where you walk in, everyone knows your name, the staff are like family. They've been serving Ann Arbor for years at this point. Hold on a second, there we go. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. All right, we're going to continue on here in just a moment, but this next one is one near and dear to my heart. I'm about to order it here in my hotel, use it to order here in my hotel. That's DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash, just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks. Saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down for Michigan. Bryce Underwood delivered in a big way. With this one, we'll do the run that he had, the second run, the scramble. Not the power one, but the scramble. Michigan's going to need that against Nebraska. When the pressure was on, Underwood came through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, you know that that's what he is capable of. Just like Underwood delivered for Michigan, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday. You order, stack it up all season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. I'll tell you what, man, time flies when you're talking and driving. At least in this type of scenario. Maybe I should do 3-hour-long podcasts on these long road trips. Yeah, it's an 11-hour drive for me. Yes, I prefer that over a 2-hour flight. But nonetheless, all right, what do I think is going to happen in this game? I do think Nebraska is going to come out on fire and drive the field early. And I think Michigan is not necessarily going to look as sharp right out the gates as it did last week. I don't think it's going to be as dire. It might look a lot like the opening drive against Oklahoma, where you're like, okay, I see some good things. It stalled out around midfield. I would venture to guess that Biff Poggi's more likely to go for it in a midfield and short scenario compared to Sherrone Moore. But we'll see. I do think that Michigan's going to be more aggressive in this game. I think it learned because of the Oklahoma game that we cannot be conservative. Right? Like, the time for conservative is over. The time of the orc is here. So I do think that you're going to see a lot more aggressive play. And I think you're going to see not run, pass, run, pass, screen, run, pass. I think you're going to see more aggressive downfield tendencies, and you're going to see him earlier in the pitch count, essentially. And I think you're also going to see Bryce have that green light continued to be like, on passing plays, read one or read two, I see open space, I'm gone. And I think that they absolutely need that. I think because even if Bryce doesn't have the same level of success that he had last week, which I would not expect, right? Nebraska is a Power 4 team. They are good enough to be able to stall Bryce Underwood out. Now, when I say that, maybe he gets 50 yards, maybe he gets 70 yards, maybe he gets 20. I don't know that he's getting 114 in this game. But having to account for him will open up opportunities for Jordan Marshall. Sorry, I was going to say Justice Haynes, but Jordan Marshall as well. And I think that you're going to see a couple big runs from both of those guys. I'm more likely to say Justice Haynes because we've seen it all 3 weeks so far. And it's starting to remind me of Blake Corum. Maybe it's not quite as emphatic as Blake Corum in 2021, where it just felt like if you're not careful, you're not going to have an 80-yard touchdown at all this game, right? But I do think, like, he's got what they call SEC speed. I think you're going to see him just able to hit a hole, have the vision, and then outrun the entirety of the Nebraska defense. I do think that's coming. I think that Michigan's offensive line will look better than it did against Oklahoma, but certainly I think we're still going to be talking about, especially with the injuries. I'm really curious to see. I really liked what I've seen from Jake Guarnera. If Brady Norton is back, do they play him over either Guarnera or Afobe? I don't know. But I do want to see what if they are able to kind of just try to find some kind of rhythm offensive line-wise. Remember, it tends to be about 4 weeks before offensive lines, in my eyes, come together in a real meaningful way. This is week 4. Now, injuries might have upset the apple cart a little bit, but it is week 4. I would expect that it is going to be a bit better, but again, this is against a better defense in a lot of ways than what they've seen. So, outside of Oklahoma, I think, might be the best defense they'll see all year. So, with that in mind, I think that there will be those running opportunities. So then the question comes, can Bryce hit his targets? Can he be a 60% plus passer? I know we want to look at it being more 70%. That's the goal, to be 70% or above in today's college football. 60% was so 10 years ago. But he was sub 60% against Oklahoma. I think if he can be 60% and some of those be on some real big hits, good deal. If Marlon Klein is anywhere close to 100%, that's a huge, huge advantage for Michigan, and that changes the calculus a lot. I do think Michigan's going to be able to have its way running the football in a lot of ways, and it plays right into Michigan's hands. On the other side, I do think Nebraska is going to try to go as much quick game as possible because it is opponent dependent. I don't think that they're going to try to have Dylan sit back and make all of these long reads. I mean, maybe if you feel like we're going to double move the corners to death, and we feel like, you know, that Michigan's corners can't keep up with our wide receivers, Dane Key or Ja'Cory or whatever, which I think would be a good way to think about it. But I think the best thing that they could do is just try to get Michigan in space, try to keep Michigan from, dominating time of possession. Not that they've done that thus far this year, but I think like that's probably what they want to do, is kind of be a little bit more methodical and mix in quick game and tempo, and those are two separate things. Remember that, and try to mix those things up. Move fast and slow at certain times. Catch the defense off guard. Quick throws after the snap. Quick snaps. Those types of things to just try to keep Michigan's defense from really kind of getting into any kind of rhythm. Regardless, I think that Michigan forces Raiola into some early mistakes that he has not made to this point this year, because I think Michigan's front seven is just head and shoulders above what Nebraska's seen to this point. I think that Raiola's lack of mobility hurts them. And even though early in the week I would have probably picked Nebraska, and remember, I picked Oklahoma. I don't think I did a preview show for the Oklahoma game, but I did go on Locked On National and predicted an Oklahoma win. So this time I have decided, just kind of based off of what Nebraska is good at versus what they are bad at, Michigan is way too good, even with the question marks, at that of which Nebraska is bad at. And I think Michigan is much better at what Nebraska has been able to exploit than what they have seen so far. So with that in mind, I am going Michigan 24, Nebraska, I'm going to go 14. I think it's going to be kind of a reverse of what Michigan and Oklahoma were. I think Michigan's going to be in the same type of place that Oklahoma was, and Nebraska's going to be in the same state as Michigan. I think it'll be close early. I think Michigan will just continuously frustrate Nebraska. I don't care about Matt Rule, year 3, all that stuff. If Michigan had more of a, Chip Lindsey or Wink Martindale as the head coach, I think it could be different. I think the fact that they get to do their jobs and that Biff Poggi gets to kind of, oversee things and make decisions, I think that that's going to work out well for Michigan. I do. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you again on Monday. Peace.